SDI is a cover for the money that goes into the weapon against the EVEs. As a matter of fact, I have the definition, or I had it here. I'll see if I can flip through it, what the definition of, oh, here it is. Definition of SDI. Program for deep space acquisition capable of tracking, plotting, and engaging targets in deep space. Now, Russian rockets don't come from deep space. Up there.
At your last lecture, you mentioned a book about belt water that wasn't allowed in the United States. Can you give me an author's name and exact title?
Yeah, I found 2 copies. They're up at the Psychic Institute up on Maryland Parkway. There's 2 copies left up there. I've never seen it in the United States, but I was walking through the other day and saw it. Yeah.
You said that there was like 70 species of aliens?
At least.
Okay, are some of them like human-like? I mean, like you or...
Some of them are, but my favorite ones are, we're working with a little boy down in Phoenix that went through a rather traumatic experience. He saw the same type of individual that abducted the 2 dock workers down there in Pascagoula, and they're my favorite. They look like pickles. They're 6 feet high. They have the bumps all over them, and they have a couple of set of weird-looking eyes and weird-looking noses or ears, and this is what this poor little guy down in Phoenix ran into. Yeah, they look all kinds of different ways.
Okay, also, this is kind of a personal question, because you touched on it, and she did, about that SDI and glasnost. And do you think there's a probability that we're getting together because we're going to get together mainly for a world defense?
SDI and glasnost is all smoke. We really got a problem. You're going to know about it very, very shortly. Yeah.
Recently, I read a magazine by Linda Howe, was the editor. It was her premier issue, and in there, it's recorded that he's an astronomer. Recorded several thousand feet of a UFO actually producing its own cloud-like cover, and they boasted that they've penetrated all of our nuclear missile sites and the Soviet Union's.
Yeah, in 1975, every one of our Strategic Air Command bases on the northern perimeter of the United States was overflown by a UFO for 3 hours, every single base. They stayed there with impunity. They changed the tracking guidance system. They reprogrammed the coordinates. I don't know where they changed them to, but they changed them. And there's also rumors that they inerted all the nuclear material. That's true. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. On a show called People Are Talking, about a month ago, there were 4 people who claimed to be aliens. It's a station out of New York City. I saw it on cable. And they were telling that they were mentioning their purpose on Earth was to teach the human race how to live in peace, because if man did not become in rhythm with the universe, he would definitely blow himself up.
And what's the question?
It was not a question. I was wondering if you were aware of these people, if you heard anything about these people who were on this talk show.
I learned about a year ago to file everything because it just might be true, so I don't discard anything. Okay, over there.
Yeah, when I was in California, at a bookstore, there was a book called Incident at Exeter, and it was stockpiled, and I went back to buy one, and it was about aliens that had landed and told a farmer to take pictures and told him when they were going to come back, and he took all these pictures, and it was gone. All the books were gone from the store the next day. You know about that book?
I know about the book. It's a good book. I haven't read that in a long time, but you can probably get it still through one of these different publication centers that deal in UFO and psychic and stuff like that. Probably can find it. It's a good book. Yes.
Several years ago, there was a movie that came out on TV. It was called Hangar 18, and a few years after that, the name was changed to Invasion from Outer Space. About the last 15 minutes of the second version of the movie was cut, and it was an excerpt from a newscast, allegedly from the saucer crash in Roswell. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah. And so what did they change the second version to?
They took out the excerpt. saying that there was a news release, and it was based on fact, and all the information be obtained. Any idea why they took it out?
No.
Have you ever seen the movie?
Yeah, I sure have. Yeah, I got it. It's a good movie. I don't have any idea. Go ahead.
I'd like to know how these aliens died that are frozen. And do you honestly think that they're hostile?
How they die, the ones that recovered died in crashes. The only one that I know that was shot at Fort Dix McGuire. I have the actual report, the incident report. He was shot by an MP, and happened in 1978. The other ones that we have on ice, they were probably taken from crashes. And the second part of your question was?
Do you honestly think they're hostile? Will they actually hurt us? Or do they have to be pushed?
Believe me, at least the Greys will. The others are pretty friendly. Yeah.
There are people who consider these fourth-dimensional beings and claim to communicate with them in high-energy areas like Sedona and Mount Shasta and Hawaii. What do you know about these things?
I didn't understand the question. Say it again.
There are people who claim to communicate with the UFOs and claim that they're fourth-dimensional beings coming from another plane of vibration, that they only come into this third-dimensional existence for us to communicate and see them.
Like I say, Sedona is a very high energy vortex area. It's a real thing. It's a center of intense gravity, and during certain times of the month, it can create the ability for interdimensional transfer, and that's when you see all these saucers. You never see them on any other days. If I give you a list of new moon, full moon, and perigee, you can go right down the newspaper and see the sightings. And as far as the communication, like I just said, I don't disbelieve anything. I file it all away because I'm just liable to find out it's true.
You made a comment about the possibility of a 4-year time frame, unless I'm taking this out of context. I think your comment was that in 2 to 4 years we'll find out the truth anyway. I wonder if you can elaborate that on, are you aware of something that you haven't shared with us, or?
I'm aware of a lot that I haven't shared with you, and I just can't do it because it's just too unbelievable. It's like trying to teach somebody arithmetic and starting out with algebra. And for the benefit of anybody, I won't go into it. As far as the time frame, the time frame is 1 to 4 years, and you will know something within the next 6 months. Yes?
You know anything about the Urantia book?
Excuse me?
The Urantia book, are you familiar with it?
Yes.
Can you elaborate upon it?
The question is?
Can you tell us something about it?
It'd take too long. It's an interesting book. Next question.
What do you propose we do about it at this point in time?
Oh, that's a good question. Everybody listen up. What can you do about this? The question is, what can you do? Listen up. Here's the answer. Absolutely nothing. Next question.
Mr. Lear, in our discussion, this is up here, we had a discussion earlier. You said something about they were able to be shot, but you only had a certain amount of time to do it or something like that. Could you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, what's the question? I'm sorry, I didn't...
About defending yourself against these kind of things. You said there was a certain amount of time you had that you could shoot one, like you mentioned earlier, that one had been shot.
If you're dealing with the Greys, you have 1 second. That's how long it takes them to take over your mind. The Air Force has certain programs which people are taught if they're dealing in and around these people. I don't know how it works. I do know that it's effective. I know somebody who listened to a tape of an Air Force transport pilot near Hawaii communicating, trying to fend off the taking over of his mind. But if you see one, you have 1 second to get them or to take over your mind.
Mr. Lear, I'm sure you've thought of things that you're not saying right now. However, I think it should be considered that this may sound extremely bizarre, but however, if the speeches of John F. Kennedy are studied before he was killed, before he was shot, I'm not sure when, but about a week or two before, he said he was going to expose a great fraud that was perpetrated upon the American public. And certainly MJ-12, certainly he was a member of MJ-12 who was going to expose this to the American people. And I believe that's why he may have been killed. And there maybe some answers lie there, as well as with the attempted assassination of Reagan. I believe at the time he was assassinated, he may have been trying to expose aspects of MJ-12 there too, perhaps. And maybe this sounds bizarre and ridiculing, but I think there's something there maybe. Maybe you should consider it if you haven't already.
The actual conversation took place 3 weeks before Kennedy was assassinated. A friend of mine heard the tape. It was taken in the Oval Office. He told MJ-12 to get it together because he was going to release the information to the public. The problem was, and why they had to deal with him like that, is because President Eisenhower was the one who let the power of the executive office slip through the fingers of the president into MJ-12. MJ-12 runs the country. Dwight Eisenhower was the last president to be fully briefed on the aliens. No president since then has got a full briefing, including President Reagan. The power is not in their hands. That subject, though, is one that can definitely get you killed.
Yeah. I was wondering what types of weapon systems do the aliens, or can they use against the Earth, and can they control the weather?
The weather can be controlled. I think that Russia or us, we can control the weather. The weapons that they use, they're just your regular laser and space-type weapons. Was that your answer? That was your question?
Weather against us as a weapon. Can they use the weather as a weapon against us?
Which weapons?
Can they cause droughts? Can they cause earthquakes?
Speculation. Sure they can. Yes, they...
Yes, how did our government make this agreement? How did they communicate with the aliens?
I don't know whether it was by mental telepathy or how they did it. I don't know about that.
In light of the not too recent or somewhat past creationist and evolutionist debates, if you say that these beings have recorded history from whatever time began, or the universe of the so-called Big Bang, it would behoove you and any other evolutionist propagandist to bring this out and stamp out religion right now. Why don't you?
Just let me comment on that. The reference to the Bible comes up several times. I will tell you right now that the Bible is far more literal than you have any idea. Okay, another question.
I was just wondering, what do you think their ultimate disposition is going to be with us? What's their ultimate motive for being here?
Are you talking about the Greys?
Uh-huh.
The Greys' reason for being here is the regeneration of their own species. Over the period of years, they have lost their ability to digest and their ability to reproduce. About 3 weeks ago, there was a movie on NBC that went right over everybody's head. What it was called Somebody Is Out There, and it was the first release of the information from MJ-12 to the public to see how they would react. And there have been probably lots of polls taken since that to see how they would react. I sat down there very carefully and wrote down a number of items, what they were trying to tell us. And if I can come up with that thing right here before we go too far. One of the items they were trying to get across is some aliens are good, some aliens are bad. The race that we are having trouble with is here to regenerate itself at our own expense. One of the things that got across is that nobody would believe it. And there was about 5 points, but those are the basic points. I can't find it right here, but there was about 7 basic points, and that's what somebody was out there was trying to get across to the public. Yeah.
You spoke last week of EBE3 being held at something called a YY2 facility, and I got the impression that it is able to dematerialize. Is that correct?
Yes, the EBEs are 1 billion years older than us. They can move by thought. They can disappear. They're held in a facility called YY-2. It was designed by Dr. Eric Wang in the early 50s, who worked directly for Dr. Kissinger. There were two of those facilities as of a couple of years ago. One was in Los Alamos. One was either at Edwards or up at the test site. If there can be anything humorous in all this, I was allowed to read 25 secret CIA memos on this trip I told you about. And in one of the memos, they can move by thought, and this YY-2 facility is electromagnetic and keeps them from going in and out by thought, but they can still disappear. So in the body of the text of one of these memos I was allowed to look at, I couldn't copy or write down anything, but it said, by the way, EBE3 wants to see the ocean. We'd better make the arrangements or he'll disappear again.
Yes, Mr. Lear, I attended your last lecture, and upon some goading from the audience, you released an additional secret, and that's when you told us about the holograph time machine. Being this going to be your last lecture, is there any little bizarre fact you'd like to lay on us before you...
I'm telling you, it is so far out. Okay, next question.
Excuse me, how do they regenerate through us?
The EBEs, I don't know how they regenerate. There's been a lot of speculation on that point. They don't have any reproductive organs. They could, well, I don't know. I just have to say I don't know. Which I'm saying a lot here, and that's truthful. Next question.
If there are 70 different beings, and they're far more advanced than us, why are they acting in a general same way? Why doesn't some come straight out to us instead of kind of undercover and quiet?
Straight out, like landing on the White House lawn, or?
Well, like if we went to another planet, would we be in hiding? Wouldn't we come out to the beings? If there's 70 different types, they all come from different areas. Wouldn't they all react different on their approach to us?
Probably, and the answer is sheer speculation on my part. The answer that I would give was they're probably not allowed to interfere. So this is why they don't make themselves known in that way. Yeah, up there.
Yes, Mr. Lear, I'd like to ask you another question about what's going on in the Nevada desert. Is there a colony of extraterrestrials out there now? And if so, how many and what variety?
Supposedly, within the confines of the test site or within 100 miles of the test site, there is 600 of them, the Greys, and they're working with us or against us, depends on who you listen to. And that information comes from an unimpeachable source. It's all I can tell you. Next.
Okay. How do we know how to keep them alive?
How do we what?
How are we keeping them alive?
How are we keeping them alive? They're keeping themselves alive, if you're talking about the Greys. And they use the cattle, they use hormones and enzymes taken from the cattle mutilations, and they mix it in this concoction. And since they don't have any, since their digestive system is atrophied, either through a nuclear war or through an evolutionary, they may be on the backside of an evolutionary curve, they can't digest, so what they do is take this mixture and they rub it on themselves, and their body absorbs the nutrients and then excretes the waste back through the skin. I've talked to Whitley Strieber about this, who has a lot of contact with the Greys, and he sees them doing this kind of stuff all the time, scraping the waste off their skin.
Based on your knowledge and information, is there a particular reason why you chose to live in Las Vegas?
No, I was transferred down here in 1973. I worked for an airline, and we bid on the Tropicana and the Thunderbird hotel contracts, and when I got here, I just stayed here forever. Yes, next question.
You sounded
outraged when you talked about experiments on humans. But isn't this just what we do to animals? Why are you so upset about it?
What was the first part? Sound outraged when what?
You sounded outraged when you talked about experiments on humans. But this is just what we do to animals, and why should we complain?
It's a very good point. A very good point. Next question.
Mr. Lear, you said that they are not allowed to interfere with us. But
remember, that's speculation.
Oh, okay. But before you said that they put computer chips on our chromosomes and little BB computers in our minds. And they're actually programming us.
Yeah, excellent.
So consequently, they are allowed. I would think they're allowed.
Some probably broke the law, right?
Oh.
Can't even imagine that. Next question. Allison. Anybody else out there?